Something was killing the rats, not trapping them, not poisoning them, hunting them. In 2023, Chinese agricultural officials released something into the sugarcane fields of Guangxi province. Something alive, something they believed they could control. Farmers were relieved at first. The rats were disappearing. The crops were being saved. Everything seemed to be working. But then, the scientists came back to check on things. And what they found in those fields wasn't what they expected. It wasn't just the rats that had disappeared. Something had changed. Something they couldn't explain. Something that made one senior researcher go completely quiet mid-sentence. He closed his notebook, looked at his team, and said 4 words no one wanted to hear. "We need to stop this." But it was already too late. If you've never seen what happens when nature refuses to follow human rules, you need to subscribe right now, because this story is only getting stranger. The sugarcane fields of Guangxi stretch for miles. Flat, dense, quiet. For decades, farmers here had one enemy: rats. Not 1 or 2, thousands, moving through the fields at night like a dark, breathing wave. In a single season, they could destroy 30% of an entire harvest. Families lost income. Villages lost food. The government had tried everything: poison, traps, fumigation. Nothing worked for long. So in 2023, officials approved a new plan. They would fight nature with nature. They released owls, hundreds of specially bred barn owls, known predators of rats, directly into the fields. Controlled, calculated, scientific. At least that's what they thought. Within weeks, the rat population collapsed. Farmers were stunned. Local officials called it a breakthrough. State media ran the story. But one field researcher, a man named Dr. Liang, based out of Nanning Agricultural Institute, noticed something the cameras didn't show. He was doing a routine count. Owl sightings, rat burrows, crop damage reports, standard stuff. Then he knelt down near the edge of the field and stopped. The rat burrows weren't just empty, they were sealed. From the inside, he'd surveyed hundreds of fields over 20 years. He had never seen that before, not once. He flagged it in his notes and moved on. He thought it was an anomaly. He was wrong, because 2 weeks later, 3 more researchers reported the exact same thing, in 3 completely different locations, on hundreds of kilometers apart. Something was happening beneath the ground, and the owls had nothing to do with it. Dr. Liang didn't sleep well that week. He kept thinking about those burrows, sealed from the inside. He requested a small team, 2 field assistants and a soil analyst named Mr. Chen. They drove out before sunrise. No cameras, no media, just 4 men and a quiet unease. They reached the first site as the mist was still sitting low over the cane. Dr. Liang crouched at the burrow entrance. He pressed his palm flat against the sealed dirt. It was packed hard, too hard. Mr. Chen ran a quick soil composition check. He stood up slowly, didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "This wasn't done by a rat." The team looked at each other. Nobody laughed. They began digging, carefully, methodically. About 30 centimeters down, the first assistance tool hit something. Not rock, not root, soft, but dense. They cleared the dirt with their hands. And there it was, a chamber. A perfectly rounded underground chamber, roughly the size of a watermelon. Walls smoothed out like something had shaped them. Inside the chamber, nothing, empty. But the smell hit them immediately. Sharp, musky, animal, but not rat. Mr. Chen pulled out his field reference guide. He flipped through pages fast. His finger stopped. He looked up at Dr. Liang. His face had changed. "This is a nesting chamber," he said quietly. "Oh, something moved in after the rats disappeared." Dr. Liang radioed the institute immediately. He used the word urgent. That word, in 20 years of fieldwork, he had never used before. The institute sent a senior zoologist the next morning. He arrived, reviewed the chamber, reviewed the samples, and immediately made a phone call to someone above his pay grade. And then they saw it. It moved. Not fast, not aggressive, but it moved. At the edge of the field, half buried in the base of a sugarcane stalk, a creature, long, pale, thick as a man's forearm. None of them had ever seen one in the wild. Not here. not in a cultivated field, not in numbers. The senior zoologist, Dr. Wei, 34 years of fieldwork, took one step forward, then stopped himself. Because there wasn't just one. As his eyes adjusted to the shadow beneath the cane, he started counting. 3, 5, 8. He stopped counting at 11. They were everywhere. Silent. Still. You watching? Dr. Liang grabbed his radio. His hand was steady, but his voice wasn't. We need containment protocol. Now. Within hours, 2 government vehicles arrived. Men in protective gear, equipment cases. Nobody smiled. Nobody explained anything to the farmers standing at the field's edge. One farmer, a man who had worked that land for 31 years, pointed at the cane field. He said he'd heard sounds the past 3 nights. Underground sounds, like something tunneling. And the containment team leader went pale. He pulled Dr. Wei aside. They spoke in low voices. Dr. Wei shook his head once, then nodded slowly. A perimeter was set up, 300 meters in every direction. Soil samples were rushed to a lab in Nanning. The results came back in less than 12 hours. That alone was unusual. Government labs don't rush for nothing. Dr. Liang received the report on his phone. He read it once, then read it again. He sat down on the ground right there in the field. Just sat down. One of his assistants asked if he was okay. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "The owls didn't change the fields. They changed something else." And then they saw it. The lab report had one word circled at the top, in red ink, uncontrolled. Here's what had happened. And it took scientists 3 weeks to fully accept it themselves. When the owls were released into the fields, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. They hunted the rats. Efficiently, completely. But rats aren't just pests. In an ecosystem, even a farm ecosystem, they are prey. And something else had been quietly feeding on them for years. Something that lived in the soil margins, in the irrigation ditches, in the dark, wet edges of the cane fields. Chinese cobra, Naja atra. Not one, not a small population, a thriving underground network of them that had silently organized their nesting across nearly 40 kilometers of agricultural land. Nobody had noticed because the rats kept disappearing. The cobras stayed hidden. The balance held until the owls took the rats. Completely. The cobra's food source, gone almost overnight. So they did what apex predators do when they're hungry and threatened. They moved toward the farms, toward the livestock, toward the people. Dr. Wei stood in front of his team and delivered that conclusion without blinking. The room was silent for a long moment. One of the younger assistants finally spoke. "So we solved the rat problem." Dr. Wei nodded slowly and created something far worse. 11 farms across 3 counties were quietly evacuated that week. No press release, no public announcement, just trucks and silence. The farmers who had celebrated weeks earlier now watched strangers in hazmat suits walk through their fields at midnight. One man stood at his fence line for hours, just watching. He didn't ask any questions. He already understood. Sometimes the solution is the problem, just wearing a different face. The story never made international headlines. Not officially. A small regional news outlet in Guangxi ran a brief article, 14 sentences. Then it was quietly taken down. But the farmers knew, the researchers knew, and slowly, the scientific community started connecting dots. A paper was submitted to a Chinese ecological journal in late 2023. The title was dry, academic, boring on purpose. But inside, the findings were anything but. The cobra population hadn't just expanded, it had restructured. Nesting patterns had shifted toward human settlement areas. Behavior that scientists had never documented in this species before. Dr. Liang was asked to present the findings at a closed agricultural conference in Beijing. No recording devices allowed. He stood at that podium and said something that silenced the room. "We didn't introduce a predator into the ecosystem. We removed one and told ourselves we were being smart." The owls were recalled from 4 of the 7 release zones. Quietly, efficiently, framed publicly as a program evaluation phase. But the damage in the ecosystem? That doesn't get recalled. 3 farmers in the affected counties reported cobra encounters near their homes within 6 months. One man was bitten while checking his irrigation line at dusk. He survived, but he sold his land the following spring. 31 years of farming, gone, because of a decision made in an office building by men who had never once walked his fields at night. Dr. Wei retired from fieldwork 8 months later. He cited personal reasons. His colleagues said he never quite recovered from what he saw in that chamber. The owls are still out there, in the remaining release zones, still hunting, still doing exactly what they were trained to do. And somewhere beneath those fields, in sealed chambers, in dark tunnels, something is still adapting, still moving, still waiting. Nature doesn't panic. It just reorganizes. And it never asks for permission. Subscribe right now, because the next story we're covering, even the scientists didn't see it coming. Hit that bell. Don't miss it.